Royal Schools for the Deaf in Manchester is a residential school for pupils with a range of severe to profound communication disorders. Students would be assessed as not meeting level 1 of the national curriculum, so their performance is measured using P-levels and pivots. To encourage communication with pupils, a multi-sensory approach is used throughout the school. Chloe Bedford is an experienced teacher of both mainstream and deaf students. In her primary class, she uses a range of strategies, including sound and vibration, objects of reference, and picture exchange to develop pupils' communication skills.
I'm Chloe Bedford and I'm a teacher in the multisensory support unit. My class is Christopher, Aidan, Annie, Hina and Joseph. Christopher is blind. He has some light perception, but not a great deal. He does have some useful hearing, but he's not at the moment tolerating hearing aids very well, so it's difficult to make use of that hearing. Hina is profoundly autistic. She also has severe to profound hearing loss. She will tolerate amplification for some of the time. I wonder if Joseph will say hello to me. Joseph has a cortical visual impairment, which means although his eyes can make use of light and he can see some things, although it fluctuates, his brain is not able to make any sense of the things that he can see. Annie, I'd like you to look. Annie is autistic, and because of her autism, she is unable to make any sense of the sounds she hears. Annie. And we also feel that she has a limited ability to process visual information. Are you going to say Aidan is autistic with a visual impairment and some challenging behaviour. Morning. Can I see you say? We use any and every form of communication that works with the students. We sign with all of our students anyway, even though they are not all able to understand or sign back, because we don't know which of the signs they do understand, and we feel we're providing them with a language-rich environment. Joseph's turn to say good morning. We are extremely well-resourced in terms of staffing, and that is what enables us to make such good progress with these students.
You become a key worker to that student and you work one-to-one in a classroom with a teacher. A lot of the students have multisensory impairment, so you need to work closely and you're trying to get them to communicate, whether through sign or verbally. We use hand-on-hand sign. So I sit behind Joseph and encourage him to use his hands.
We have a greeting every morning. The format is always the same because our students need to know exactly what's happening and need to know what to expect. Tuesday. We use what's called a multisensory approach because we need as many ways as possible to give information to children. That's Tuesday. Smell is a very important part of every lesson.
Tuesday today.
Every day we have a different tactile card and a different scent for the day. Tuesdays was peppermint. This is done to cue the children in so that they begin to understand that you smell this particular smell and you feel this particular feeling, and then these are the things that are likely to happen on this day. Joseph is asking for the rain. That's lovely. It's the rain. It is. The reason we use the sign rain is because the students seem to be very motivated by the feeling of spray on their head. So they are quickly able to make the link between this being done and then the sensation of water being sprayed. So we start off by coactively signing. That's where you actually do it with the student. With Hina, it's been reduced to a prompt to tap on the arm. Good girl. Signing rain. Hina signed rain. And Annie is still very coactively signing, but I can leave her towards the end of the movement and she will complete it. And she understands that when she does that, then she gets the sensation she likes, which is minty water being sprayed around her. So it's all very much to do with being motivated. Tuesday. Are you ready? Smell. Oh, that's fantastic. Well Aidan will use photographs to identify other children, but all of the rest of the students are using objects of reference to identify each other. This is Aidan's object of reference, and we give the pupils an identical one to match it. Christopher, Hina, Joseph and Annie. The object or the activity is paired with the person over and over again until almost always the student learns to associate that object with that activity. We're going to do our timelines for Tuesday. The book. Once you're there, you can then use the objects on a timeline, so you're able to communicate to the student what they will be doing today. Pick up your book.
Well done.
And put it on the timeline, Annie.
Drink. Drink. Good boy.
They can look at the timeline and see how many things there are left today, if there's a lot or a few. And we can give them, for example, their spoon to tell them that now it's time to go to dinner. Christopher and Joseph, who do have visual impairments, will use objects of reference as their main term of reference. Dinner time! Dinner time!
Dinner.
Well done.
Dinner. To get him to sign, especially things like dinner, that's a good, reinforcement, because if he can sign dinner, then he can tell us that he's hungry. And if he can tell us that he's hungry, then we can move on with that. And he's got to understand that sign means something.
Joseph is learning the names of things. He's got very, very good tactile exploration, so we're not focusing as much on that. And Annie is holding things and feeling things, and maintaining eye contact is what we're working on quite a lot with Annie. And again, matching tactile cards. You would like dinner, but we're waiting. For Annie and Hina, who can see, but because of their autism, they can't process what they see accurately, and we don't know how much sense they make of the visual world. We use objects of reference with them as well as sight. Yes, please. Each student has a set of individual objectives for every session. Pick it up. For Christopher, it is to learn the signs of the names of the objects we use and to seek objects. Pick up. He has been very reluctant to explore things with his hands, and obviously his first sense is going to be tactile, and he is going to need to look for things and explore them. Christopher is matching tactile cards to objects as well, and we're hoping soon to start pairing objects of reference with photographs so that the photographs begin to make sense, and then we'll gradually withdraw the objects of reference. Hina can be difficult to keep on task. She's also quite hyperactive, and her LSA struggles sometimes. In between times, Hina was allowed to go off and maybe get something else to do, get something out of a tray. In fact, I encourage that. Time for Hina to go and get changed. Hina will then understand that if she gives me a bit, she can relax a bit. And for a student like Hina, the fact that she's engaged and interested in one activity is something that we look for and value. Straight in. Hina, from a very early age, has been very keen to get messy. She likes wet, sloppy things. Another problem is that because Hina will only tolerate pureed food, and pureed food is nice and sloppy, we were finding at dinner times that her hands were going into the food and the food was going right across the room, and not much of it was getting into Hina. We decided to try a desensitisation programme, and desensitisation can be used for many things, but this was just one example of it, where Hina is allowed to get as wet and as messy and explore as many textures as she likes until she no longer wants to do it. And we have found that if she is allowed to completely indulge her attraction for wet and sloppy things, that she is then not as quick to do it at times when it isn't appropriate. And we worried initially that it might encourage her, but we have found that stopping her from doing it makes her more frantic, and she will find something sooner or later. So allowing her to do it, and she does it normally on a daily basis now, helps us to tell her it's not appropriate at other times.
Students are also exposed to tactile experiences as they explore the concept of pushing and pulling in Anne Goff's science class.
The science lesson is part of the RSD programme of study. And the particular programme of study that I was following said that for this term that we'd be doing forces.
Hold it and pull.
So I take the programme of study and differentiate it to make it specific to meet the needs of the students within this group.
Pulling.
Sophia is only 4 years old and is the youngest student at the school. And the reason that she's come to this school is because she has a vast range of very, very complex needs, one of which is deafness. And everybody who was involved in placing Sophia at the school felt the benefits of the right approach to education outweighed the fact that she didn't have an appropriate peer group. The students within this group all have profound and multiple learning difficulties, and therefore they are working at a very similar level to Sophia, regardless of the fact that they're older. But we differentiate the curriculum for each individual child. We were looking at developing the students' manipulative skills in the lesson. Most of the students in this group don't find it very easy to grasp and release and to use their hands. And in order to develop effective forms of communication, they need hand function. Most of our students haven't developed that skill. Therefore, they're not particularly motivated by objects and not motivated by communicating about them because they don't explore them. So one of the things that we're teaching is exploration. All the movements that you see with Sophia are not intentional. If something's on her and it's annoying her, we want her to understand that she can use her hands in order to remove that item. We'll maybe put a cloth over her face or on her neck and see if she can move her hands intentionally towards that item to remove it. And that links in with the science lesson in that we're putting things around her, asking her to hold them, pull them, move them, feel the movements of them.
Oh, you like it?
And I will set the same objectives for that lesson for perhaps 6 weeks, perhaps 6 months. The learning support assistant will record in great detail what's happened in that lesson. I will then look at that to see if consistently within a repetitive session we've had the same response.
Learning support assistants are encouraged in their professional development, and Camilla Stewart is on site to support training in communication strategies.
Remember, no verbal prompts.
I started here, I didn't have any qualifications at all, and I've taken advantage of all the training that's been offered. I've done visual impairment courses, sign language courses, NVQ, and find professional development really important.
If you physically prompt, it means you can withdraw the prompts gradually, and that's why we're going through the PECS training with the students.
PECS, Picture Exchange Communication System, is a way of giving students the opportunity to ask for things. You've seen them coming to give us pictures, and this is what it's all about. Well done, Annie. A drink.
Your confidence is much better because you have an idea of what you're doing.
Grape, well done. Right, lovely. Well done, Sue.
We differentiate the curriculum as imaginatively as we possibly can. The reason we're doing a poem this term is because that's what's on the programme of study. I'm trying to get across something of the nature of poetry and them being an audience rather than them being the centre of attention.
I went for a walk in the garden. I went for a walk one day. I went for a walk in the garden and collected some things on the way.
I made up a rhyme involving objects that they find in the sensory garden. It gives them the same learning in 2 different contexts. So we'll take them to where the stones are, and then for the second verse we'll move on to where the bushes are and break twigs off the tree.
On the way. First, I found a stone.
If we just gave it to Christopher to feel, he might think that a stone is anything that's heavy.
Heavy.
So we get him to feel it, feel its roundness.
It's round.
If I ask Christopher what something is, he may well tell me it's a stone. But if another adult asks him or someone he's not so familiar, he won't respond. So it's about transferring learning.
I picked some lavender growing by my feet.
If we gave him lavender to feel, he might get the sense that lavender is just something that is rough.
Oh, is that lovely, Chris? Are you smelling the lavender?
Whereas if he smells it and feels it and holds it and looks for it, he gets more of an idea of what lavender is.
I would like Christopher to find the lavender. Good boy, well done, Christopher. I wonder if he can do it again.
Joe, for example, is extremely good at picking up an object and exploring it in a tactile way.
Sharp and gritty gravel was the last thing that I found.
We also encourage him to look at and to smell the object so that he is getting a sense of the whole object.
And made a lovely sound.
There's a lot of pattern and a lot of repetition, and we have focused, as you probably noticed, very much on the rhythm using sharp and gritty gravel.
Sharp and gritty gravel. Sharp and gritty gravel. Sharp and gritty gravel.
One of the earliest reading skills is being able to sequence. So we use the tactile cards to prompt the students to remember the object from each verse.
First I found a stone lying on the ground.
And we encourage them to order those, and we encourage them to order them in a left to right sequence.
Did you pick up the stone?
In the same way that reading and writing would be. I was very pleased with today's lesson. I think it was probably one of the better sessions. All of the students were on task, all of the students were in the session, and all of the students were involved in the session.
Well done, Hina, fantastic.
Annie spent a lot of time throwing her tactile cards on the floor because she's telling me that she's no longer interested in that task.
I'd like you to pick up the cards. Who do you think's going to win this one?
Annie's buzzing, we call it. Annie generally buzzes when she's happy. She enjoys the vibrotactile feedback she gets from it. Many autistic children constantly crave stimulation because their receptors aren't working in the same way as ours, so you might see them slapping themselves or doing this sort of thing.
Annie. Well done, Annie.
When she wants to, she is able to do some quite complex tasks. She can match, she can sort, but it's very much on her terms. If these students were not working one-to-one, they wouldn't be working. And there's none of them could be left to get on with tasks on their own.
I think Joseph should get a certificate because he kept asking for a drink.
Joseph, did you want a drink?
It was a very good lesson. Joseph's coming along really well with his signing to the point where yesterday he just ate us out. He just signed for food all day, which is fantastic, which is what we want him to do.
For Joe, who is very hyperactive, the fact that he sat for over 40 minutes altogether was magnificent. And even on top of that, he was doing some very active learning. He was mimicking signs, he was interacting, he was vocalising.
Well done, Joseph. That's a new sign for Joseph.
Aidan, can you put this on lavender? That stick.
Aidan's vision fluctuates, and when it's a particularly noisy session, which it can be with 4 LSAs talking to 4 other students, it can be quite distressing for Aidan, and Aidan was very good. Aidan matched his cards. Aidan was congratulated on several occasions during the morning.
Aidan, good boy. Can you put this on stick? Oh, good boy.
Stick.
Christopher is picking up new signs on a daily basis, and we're getting quite excited about that. So we're focusing on that with Chris, and I was very pleased with his signing. He signed stick and was congratulated for
Can I
it.
have more signs? Can you show me? Stick. Oh, well done.
Christopher is incredibly motivated by sound and vibration, in particular vibration. We think that's probably because he can pinpoint the location of vibration, and it's more difficult for him to pinpoint the location of sound because his hearing loss is uneven, and we rely on stereo hearing to pinpoint sound. He loves his foot spa, and we use it as a motivator. His break time is his leisure time, and if he wants to sit and hug the foot spa, then we're more than happy for him to do that. Nobody else is particularly keen on the foot spa.
On my washing line, drying in the sun.
When you sing or use a very sing-song voice, you're covering a lot more frequencies than you're covering with a speaking voice, so it gives hearing-impaired students a better chance.
What did Aidan do that was clever?
It started with Aidan, whose LSA, when he did something good, would sing Aidan's clever, Aidan's clever. And we realised that he always knew he was being praised when that song was sung.
Aidan's clever, clever, clever. Aidan's clever.
So we made up clever songs for all of the other students and found that we got a fantastic response from them, and they know that they're being sung to, that it's their special song, that they're being praised, and everybody is singing to them. Music is innate, and its similarities to language are endless, and we find music is a big way in for things like turn-taking, expressing emotion, mimicking.
We start the session by playing the gong, so it's just to introduce the sound of the gamelan. The gamelan is a big orchestra of percussion instruments, and it's from Indonesia. So welcome to the gamelan. You ready to listen? Traditionally in the gamelan, the gong plays at the start of a cycle, and the gongs have the biggest vibration and resonance, and the sound is so special and so beautiful. I feel it's a nice way to start the session. We know that Christopher really likes the vibration, and he loves the gongs. He really, really loves them.
There was some wonderful communication going on. He asked for more. Now, he won't do that unless he's very motivated. We were able to use his interest in the gong to get him to understand that he can ask for things he wants by signing, and to reinforce that understanding.
More?
Yes, more. Good boy. Hina was finding the session very difficult and was upset, but she remained in the session and was interested in the gong and was able to put her hand on the gong and feel it vibrating. I don't think she would have stayed in the session had there not been sound and vibration. So again, with our constant aims to keep Hina on task and involved in a session, there were a couple of points at which I wondered whether to stop the session because Hina was finding it difficult.
She's not a happy bunny. With Annie, things take time. I think she was experiencing the sound and enjoying the sound, I felt. I didn't feel that she was distressed. After the vibration had really died down, Annie vocalised at the end, and Christopher did. And we're not saying that's definitely because they heard, but if that happened continuously, you'd feel that there's some connection. And there's obviously a lot of communication and enjoyment that comes out of experiencing music.
Getting a dialogue going with instruments in here is an awful lot easier than getting a dialogue going anywhere else. For example, a student will hit. If you then mimic their hit, they will be interested and they might hit again. So you hit again, and already you're teaching them a lot about turn-taking. If you copy them, they often are aware of it and find it amusing and enjoy the fact that they are getting you to do something, and you're immediately teaching them a lot about mimicry and its value. There's a universal understanding of music. We all agree about what is discordant and what isn't. We all agree that a minor chord sounds very sad, and we understand when music is happy or funny. We can play students very sad music and say, this is sad, this feels sad. You may have noticed that a lot of the time when Christopher was laughing, we're telling him, Christopher, you're happy, you're laughing. We're able to communicate things with our students in a way that language can't, because they're not able to access it. If they are angry, they can tell you that by the way they're playing. If they're happy, they can tell you the same thing. Many of our students don't understand their feelings and certainly couldn't put a name to them. You can teach them a lot about their own feelings. I want them to have that glorious multi-sensory experience that taking part in music is.
The structures that we use up here are really, really simple structures, and they could be used with classroom percussion instruments as well. Just a simple start signal and a simple stop signal, and everyone playing is a really good place to start, and everybody can have a go at that. You don't need to have a music degree, so don't be afraid.
For me, the gamelan session is a wonderful and useful place to put learning in, because they are more able to tolerate it, because it's very motivating for them.
It can be very stressful with children with challenging behaviour, and as long as you understand that you don't take it personally, you can get through the day.
Christopher's a clever boy, clever boy.
Every day's different. Things that the students will do on one day, they won't do the next day, and you can have one day where you're as high as a kite and another day where you wonder why you're here at all, frankly.
It takes a long time to get there, but when you do get there, it's extremely rewarding. I just love it.
In the same way as mainstream teachers are able to celebrate noticeable and larger achievements, we are able to celebrate every tiny step that our student takes, and we do. We celebrate every one of them.
A-I-S and Annie is her name. Well done, Annie. Well done, everybody.